Oh, it's time to bring the magic, Stu. It's been so long, I almost forgot how to press the record button. But we're back. It's Henry Weston's old mate. And I'm Phil Walton, and it's been a long time. So how are you doing, Stu? Good to see you.
Very good to see you. Oh, yeah, really well, Phil. It's been over a couple of weeks, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has.
Busy lives, the pair of us lead.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's it. There were some rumours going around in the gossip columns that we had a falling out over pay and conditions, but I think we just need to put that to bed. That there's as you've just said, there are priorities outside of the podcast that we need to attend to with family and work commitments and that sort of stuff. So that was on my side over the last couple of weeks. So, but things are all good. Things are settling down, and it's actually very nice to have some distraction and come back and have a chat with you, Stu, and kind of do the pod. So I've actually been looking forward to it the last couple of days.
So have I, mate.
Yeah. So as we always do, keeping well, keeping sober. How are things overall?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Mental health is in a, as far, it's my own personal scale, but I'd say we're sort of hovering around an 8.5, 9 out of 10 at the minute, and for a few weeks. And, we just discussed it very briefly off air. I don't think it's any coincidence that I haven't worked any of the last 5 or 6 weekends. It's part of my job. It's not a complaint. But when I'm not working the weekends, as I tend to when this sort of colder weather comes around, it's fantastic working Monday to Friday, enjoy the weekends. Still doing my exercise. My wonderful wife decided we should do these 100 squats a day for November. I think it's for the NSPCC. So I know I have done my 100 every day so far. I also know my wife hasn't. But
both there.
Oh yeah, but she's done very well. But I'm now at the point where I can sort of bang out 2 lots of 40 and then finish the last 20 off. At the start, 15 was more than enough in one go. So going well. Yeah, all good. Very sober. I must say that I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing, but I've been having a non-alcoholic beer 3 or 4 evenings a week in recent times. I don't know what's going on there, but
okay.
Yeah.
Well, as long as you're liking the taste, and it's
it's
free. There we go.
Yeah, my brother bought me a very nice crate over on a visit a couple of weeks back, and I've been partial to it. So all in the name of sobriety, of course.
Excellent. So while we're on that note, then I've seen that your social media is awash with "Stay sober with Stu." I think that's the tagline. Talk to us about that.
December 18th will be my 4-year sobriety. Touch wood, I make it. I can't see any reason why I wouldn't. So I have been running a small charity fundraiser. It is simply called Stay Sober with Stu. If you could possibly donate the cost of 1 beer, either donate now or donate on the 18th of December. I'm fortunate enough to have a few raffle prizes in the pipeline. I will hopefully be able to raffle off some prizes from work and from some local publicans. So that might be in contrary to the beliefs of the pod, but it might be, we can say it's for food, not alcohol. So anyone, I'm going to raffle anyone who donates £5 or more or will qualify for 1 raffle ticket. So if you donate £10, you will qualify for 2 raffle tickets. Anyone who has donated already, they will get backdated raffle tickets. So if you've donated £5, you will obviously be in line for 1 backdated ticket. I will make people aware of the prizes in the next pod me and you record. Hopefully I'll have 4 or 5 prizes varying across meals in town to hopefully some golf wear and maybe a game of golf, depending on how generous my big boss at work is feeling. So, yeah, December the 18th, Stay Sober with Stu. Donate if you can. There are prizes available.
Okay. And if you're not in the Kent area and you win a raffle prize, I think there are a couple of kind of half-used bottle of CBD oil and pizza oils that have been advertised on the show that aren't quite finished, and we can put them in the post as well.
Well, I tell you what, if my good friend James donates a bit of a meal voucher to his pub, the King's Headed Deal, I tell you what, if you're lucky enough to win that and can't use it because you don't live locally, I will reimburse you the funds and eat it myself.
Okay.
There you go.
And enjoy it very much, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get on to business then. So we've taken a kind of a long travel through kind of the experience, the history, the roller coaster ride of kind of what it's been like in the midst of alcoholism, dependence, addiction, hospitalization, and then kind of getting used to sobriety, but still within kind of touching distance of that 18th of December kind of crunch point, rock bottom. I think today we're going to look a bit further afield from that. So maybe start the timeline from about 18 months, 2 years from sobriety, and start looking at, you know, the positives that are starting to come out of it. I think initially you were out of necessity having to be sober because it was either drink and die or stay sober and live. But now these choices, you can easily see how people can slip. But developing a lifestyle that supports your sobriety, but also crucially what you've said in previous episodes is you've got to enjoy your life.
Yes.
You've got to find both purpose and kind of fun within that. So I guess this is kind of, let's pick up on that a little bit. Does that sound like a good place to go?
Yeah, sounds good. Let's have some positivity in recovery.
Okay, good. So I think my perception from the way outside is that, and maybe I'm using myself as the anchoring point within that sometimes I will have a drink in an evening because it just fills a bit of time and it fills a bit of space. And I don't know if you were the same for that in certain cases, but there must have been a space that you had to occupy where your drinking used to be. What were you doing from hobbies, habits, whatever, that actually filled that time, took your mind away from drinking, that sort of thing?
Initially, well, in the very sort of early period, I know we're not really talking about that today, but initially eating sweets and just watching the telly. The sweets, as you'll probably understand, was my body craving the well, not the alcohol, but the I don't know, the sugar possibly. Yeah. But then a year or so in, my evenings, because obviously I was working coming home about 2, and our daughter was really quite young, so that was sort of keeping us busy. But when she went to bed, I developed a rather unhealthy relationship with my Xbox for a period of time, which wasn't very good.
On that doesn't sound very good.
Non-sexual.
Okay, fine. Okay, they've got vibrating kind of controllers, haven't they? So okay, all right.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, just I was searching for that was purely to occupy myself, and I'd find myself playing for 4 or 5 hours, which really isn't me. I play my Xbox still, but not half as much as I did then, and that was just occupying my time and my mind, I think. But as a lot of people, anyone listening to this who plays the FIFA franchise will understand that Ultimate Team is a frustrating game at the best of times, and when your mental health is a bit fragile. I mean, it was worse for me. That was bad, playing that game or doing anything like that. But I needed it because I don't know what else I'd have done. I wasn't wanting to drink, but if I wasn't occupying my brain, then the negative thoughts, not necessarily of drinking, but the sort of fragile mental health would certainly rear its ugly head.
Okay, so I'm not a gamer. I've had consoles in the past, but I can't dedicate the time to it to actually feel like I'm enjoying it or anything like that. So I don't game anymore. What is it about either a FIFA that was so affecting for your mental health? I mean, was this just you against the machine, or were you online playing with people? Did you have a headset on and people giving you a load of crap?
No, well, it's the sort of the theory with Ultimate Team. It's like a lot of these games. It's sort of loot box based, really. You through gameplay, and if you choose to by adding money, which I did to a small point, but nothing bad. Well, probably 500-600 quid, which I suppose is a bit. But by dedicating time, you then acquire loot boxes, which 1 in 10 gives you something good, the other 9 are a load of rubbish. So, and you try to upgrade your team to the point where you can then go online and match yourself against others. But I just found it thoroughly frustrating. But I did. There was certainly addictive. I at points during that cycle of FIFA 19 in my early sobriety, I found myself waking up, and sometimes my first thought was my FIFA Ultimate Team, which was a little bit worrying. I was sort of trying to dedicate 3 or 4 hours some Sunday to grind the game for 2 lousy packs when sort of rewards were given out Monday, that were worth absolutely nothing, as I knew they would be. But at the time, I became quite obsessed with it. And looking back, I probably put 300 or 400 hours into that game, I reckon.
Okay. So, and quite, from with this much distance, it just appears that you've substituted one. Yeah. We'll put it in the realm of addiction, but there might be some hairs to split on that. But you've substituted one addiction for another. You've become obsessed with just doing something to fill your time and to concentrate your mind. I guess to one extent less destructive from a physical point of view, but you've said about the mental health point of view. But presumably Mrs. Butler is not sat watching you play FIFA or even getting involved and playing.
No, well, do you see the problem here, which I probably contributed to the sort of the negative impact on my mental health, was at the time that the Xbox was set up in the living room as it is now, but we've since got the extension, so we've got another telly option downstairs. So what I would do is watch telly with my wife to the point where she went to bed, which could have been any time between sort of 8:30 and 10, and then I might put 2 or 3 hours in from there. And I was back to work full time by now, so I was potentially going to bed after midnight with a 4:30, 5 o'clock alarm, for work. And getting up, no problem, but I must have been, it can't have been any good, living on 4.5, 5 hours sleep.
It's fascinating from this end, because what you're describing in terms of behavior is what you were doing in alcoholism.
Yeah, but just
drinking. Yeah. Wait for the responsible adult to go to bed, and then I'm going to smash it, and whatever that smash it is, you're going to do it in kind of the privacy of your own company and probably set in your underpants.
Yeah. Old scraggly ones as well.
Nice. There's an image for everybody there. Okay, so how did you get out of that?
Oh, how did I get out of that? Well, people might as well laugh. That actually, FIFA 19, the game disc actually ended up smashed into little pieces to stop me playing it. It came, well, not smashed, just snapped in half. I got to the point where I was getting very angry with that game, and I broke it to stop me playing it. They released it on Game Pass about 10 days after I'd done that, so I just downloaded it for free again, which is absolutely bonkers. But FIFA, how did I get out of that? Well, I did actually, I kind of went cold turkey on the Xbox in the end, and I didn't really find exercise at that time, but I got into a routine of pretty much going to bed when my wife did for a period of time. I'd love to tell you I started reading books and found a love of art and everything, but I just went cold turkey on the gaming for a period, and started getting myself to bed earlier. So that's then and then we sort of move on to the good stuff after that, really. But like just looking down at my notes, That sort of was a sort of period in my recovery where, like, using FIFA, I wanted to find something to get into that I could really call a hobby, but that would bring me enjoyment. FIFA wasn't that, but I purchased some books, some self-help books, some sort of CBT books, some autobiographies, and sort of read a few, Russell Brand, Mike Tyson, how they turned their sort of lives around from addiction. And I'm reading this thinking, I'll find my something. I just want to find my light bulb moment, something that makes me happy, when I come in from work, what I can do. But in all honesty, I wasn't putting the work in. I was reading 2 chapters of a book and thinking, well, that's brilliant. I'll just go out into the world and find what makes Stu happy, without putting any hours into it.
Yeah. So that was 2 things I was going to say. I'll say the more serious one first. I guess waiting for something to happen, waiting for it to click.
Yeah.
I guess is kind of taking the path of least resistance. And I think, I guess it might be lessons for you to learn to put in the bank, that when you're taking the path of least resistance and hoping things happen for you, that's where your addictive traits might come in.
Potentially, very much so.
But then when you start to actually, really work at something, focus on it, concentrate, it becomes a positive. And you can kind of find that meaning and purpose. The other thing I was going to say is I've read the Mike Tyson autobiography, and I read it to the end and wish I'd stopped at the first chapter. It is the most uncomfortable read from somebody that, you admire as a sports person because he was just brutal at what he did.
Yeah.
But he was brutal in outside as well.
I know the backstory without reading the book. That was the first. My mum brought me that book in after my first night in hospital. I think it's just something she'd picked up, but I never read it. So it sits about two inches from where I sit on the sofa. It's still there. I might get round to reading it, but yeah, he wasn't a particularly good bloke, was he?
No, not at all. I think the rape conviction probably seals that as not a good bloke. That puts you in that category.
Yeah.
So okay, we digressed somewhat. Russell Brand would sound like an interesting read, though. Did you get more than a couple of pages into that one? No.
No, sorry. I'll come. Listen, tune in next week for Stuart's first book review.
When we start running out of material for this, we'll just let you read a chapter at a time.
That'd be good. Yeah.
You have to just do the accent. Okay. I'm going to write that down as an opportunity to move forward. Okay. So, how was work in this time? So 2 years, kind of, you're over. So I'm going to make an assumption around something, and you can tell me how wildly wrong I am. But in going back to work after kind of crisis time and all the rest of it, my assumption, and some of it is based on my own experience when I've had kind of significant period of time off work from a mental health point of view, is that you go back into work and there's kind of a honeymoon period. People walk around on eggshells a little bit, don't want to upset you, want to make sure that you're all right. But that naturally, and it should come to an end, and you roll your sleeves up and get stuck in again, without that kind of protective bubble. So firstly, is that a wildly inaccurate kind of?
No. And to be honest, with my during my drinking period, most of my adult life, people used to walk around on eggshells around me quite a lot anyway, because I had a pretty temperamental temper or whatever, I wasn't nice to upset, and I didn't care who I argued with, so I would be very confrontational, and when you're like that, people are generally a bit worried to upset you, aren't they? So that was not my strongest point. But yes, when I returned to work, I certainly had the period where everyone was very conscious to, be be nice to me, which was good, and understood my situation. And my boss and the golf club were, very understanding of my needs. I'd be perfectly honest, I was, quite needy, and had periods of sort of time off in that, even when I returned to work fully. So that's how it started. But then I never really experienced that point where I never slipped back into my old role. I kind of sort of, it's hard to say. My role I left before I was ill was one of reasonable sort of standing and seniority within the team, and that has sort of been diluted down somewhat since my illness.
Okay. So kind of a a change in responsibility since going back. Okay, fine. Given that you still work there, I think it's probably not so fair to kind of ask you how you feel about that, because there's probably mixed emotions. So let's tiptoe.
Not mixed emotions.
Not mixed emotions.
They're very clear emotions.
Okay, fine. Well, let's not pick that scab.
Let's not.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. Okay. So that stumped me. So give me a moment. So let me think then about. So I'm going to go start reversing back a little bit. So you've done FIFA, you've snapped it, and then they've released it for free anyway.
But I didn't go back to it, actually. I put it back on the hard drive, but I didn't go back to playing it.
Okay. You bought a library's worth of books and read the first 3 chapters at most. So what was the thing, Stu? What actually got you into because we started the preamble of this part of the episode saying finding positives, and actually what we're talking about are the things that didn't work.
Yes. I found the electric bike that my dad had given me that was partly responsible or wholly responsible for a lot of trips to the off license, became my new best friend for toing and froing to work. And that was it really. That was where my exercise, my sort of, I'm not a triathlete now by any standards, but I am a 41-year-old man who is probably fitter than he has been at any point in the last 20 years. I might not look it to anyone watching this screen, but I regularly run anywhere between 20 to 35 miles a week, and cycle to and from work, when it's not too windy and cold, because I'm a bit soft now. But and that all started from getting on the electric bike, which progressed reasonably quickly to just the old pedal hard, my standard bike without a battery, and that was over the sort of period of a year or so. I found that, and from that, exercise sort of crept in. I sit at around, let's say, if my fighting weight is around 13.5 stone, I'd sort of jumped on the scales and I wasn't shocked to see that they said 14 stone 10 pounds, which was a stone and a bit over where I was comfy. I knew I was heavier.
Yeah.
So I embarked on I didn't try running really then, but I embarked on some home workout DVDs by everyone's best friend, Mr. Joe Wicks.
Okay, and how did that go?
Do you know, me and Joe Wicks lasted about 2 workouts, and it was nothing against Joe Wicks. The problem I had was I'd arranged to play a game of golf with Liam, who I still work with, and a friend of mine, Tom Bissett, who was working. He was working with us. He's since moved on. And I did my second or third Joe Wicks workout, and this happened to be a shoulder workout. And I've never worked shoulders in my life. And I did it the day before this game of golf, and it was only some body resistance work, probably a few press ups and blah blah blah. I couldn't move the next day. So I went to play golf, and I hit a half decent tee shot down the first, and then when I'd hit it 10 more times and still hadn't got anywhere near the green, I had to pick my golf clubs up without spitting my dummy in true Stuart fashion like I used to have done. But I had to. I said to the gents I was playing with, I said, I can't. I don't know. And it took me about 3 days to get over that workout, and I just never went back to Joe Wicks and his DVDs after that.
Again, there is a moral to this story. So you bought the DVDs, and then lockdown happened, and he was doing it for free every morning.
I had to do that with my daughter. Yeah.
There's a cycle there. That when Stuart gives something up, just wait a couple of days and it'll be free.
Yeah. I actually got. They're one thing that hasn't been sold on eBay in the last 12 months. I'll have to get them up.
There'll be a collector's item once he's got his knighthood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay. So one thing that hasn't really, I don't know, just in the way that we've described the timeline, a lot of this has always felt like it's a long time ago. But when we consider what we'd said at the very beginning of this episode around you coming up to your 4-year anniversary.
Yeah.
And we've started this conversation today about kind of from the 2 years in sort of period.
Yeah.
Actually, lockdown happened, COVID happened not long after, I guess, your 2nd anniversary of sobriety. And I was listening to a different podcast recently. Sorry, it's not cheating if you're not on it. Mm-hmm. And they were talking about Louis Theroux.
Right.
Describing 2020 as being by far and away his most alcoholic year of his life. Right. Which I can absolutely agree with. And I think many people that would listen to this would say, you know, those evenings were boring. There was nothing to do. Got into your craft beers, your mail order stuff, all of that. And that was kind of a release which wasn't afforded to you unless it was a relapse.
Yeah.
So that must have been, it was testing for everybody, but there were less constraints on people from the alcohol point of view than you would put on yourself. So what was, it's a long-winded way of just asking how lockdown was for you.
Yeah, lockdown, like I think probably for 90% of the country or the world, it was a struggle. It was a struggle. In lockdown 1, my daughter was at nursery, so it was just, there was no work sent home or anything. She was too young for work, so it was just me and her trying to keep busy. But although it was a struggle and long days, that's when we found walking. I'd put my daughter in the pushchair and we'd go off and walk from my house down to Deal Pier, or our house down to Deal Pier and back, which is about a 5.5-6 mile round trip. And we found ourselves doing that certainly Monday to Friday. Yeah. Saturday, Sunday, my wife was around to share the responsibilities, thankfully. But the walking developed into what is now my sort of running. I don't want to call my running an addiction, but it's certainly I would almost call it a necessity in my life. Mm-hmm. I started plodding out. Let's say what lockdown started in March, sort of, I think by May, I'd got into a nice routine of getting up before my wife.
Okay, let's just acknowledge the fact that Stu's Wi-Fi gave up, and we are now. I don't know that the editing is going to be slick enough just to kind of run it into a seamless. Sorry to not have the complete faith, Stu, but so yeah, there was a Wi-Fi related incident, and so we're just going to pick up. So where you left off, you were talking about your running developing and it becoming not necessarily an addiction but a necessity for you. So you'd got to the point where you were getting up early in the day before Mrs. B and presumably going out for a run.
Yeah, running for about an hour, or being out of the house for about an hour, and probably running for 35 to 40 minutes of that. And quite quickly, I sort of found or learnt that endorphin sort of rush that, you know, you hear people explain from physical exercise. It's something that I'd sort of never experienced, but I think with sobriety and this sort of newfound willingness to exercise, the good effect it was having on my mental health. But I'd go out for a run and come back with these amazing ideas. I think, you know, my blog sprung from, you know, a 7-mile run, and this podcast has developed from the blog. But I'd come back in a much more positive frame of mind. And what I really did find was that early morning exercise, although it wasn't still in lockdown, it set me up so much better for a day of supervising, stroke entertaining, stroke surviving with my 3-year-old daughter at the time. And we've you know, it's kicked on from there. You know, I like the most people. I just started dedicating 3 or 4 hours a week to learning French, which went really well for a period of about 6 weeks. But I never stuck with that. People won't be surprised to hear that. But I have stuck with the running.
Yeah.
And now it is very much a part of my life.
So what is it about? I'm gonna hone in on the French. What is it that stopped you? That kind of, you got to the point of
Je n'ai pas.
Je n'ai pas. Le manges-tu dans la piscine? That sort of shit.
You can't take vegetables into the swimming pool, Phil.
Well, you can take some spuds, mate.
Oh no.
There was almost a drink and spitting kind of there. No, you can't take vegetables into the swimming pool. You're right. They make you wear those funny shorts in France as well, so which is not great. So you don't know why you gave up, other than
well, I know the French. I got into the French because sort of at this period as well, during our house extension, my wife and sort of daughter moved into my wife's parents for a period. So I found myself with quite a bit of sort of time on my hands, or because my youngest brother was over living in our sort of broken down house. So I spent a bit of time here. So I lost that when I eventually sort of moved over there, although I did move back quite quickly. I just fell out of the routine and sadly never got it back. I mean, I've tried learning French 2 or 3 times. That was the most successful period, about 6 weeks worth. And I will get back to it one day. But I don't know. It's hard work, isn't it? I just didn't stick with it. I don't have a natural talent. I don't have a natural talent for running, but I know the benefits are there, you know,
It's also a different measure, isn't it? You can be proficient as a runner within your own standards.
Yeah.
And your own expectations. To be a proficient French speaker requires you to actually have some coherence about what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
And the confidence to do it without feeling like you are Renee from Hello.
I will learn French. I will.
I mean, this is the thing that my wife takes the piss out of me with this, because I grew up within an hour of France, and can't, you know, I've done better with it. I get by. We always go on holiday to France, but I'm not fluent, and I wish I was. So, and interestingly, just an aside, my eldest daughter and I have started learning sign language in the last couple of weeks, but but I'm worried that I'm going to stop learning it because I'm a little bit, I think, a little bit like you in that I need the routine. I need the see the reason for doing it and then being able to practice it as well. So there's both of us doing it, but yeah, we'll see how that works out.
Well, good luck.
There we go. There's a sign for the YouTube watchers.
Oh yes. Well, my daughter comes back with some signs, but I'm not going to attempt to imitate them in case I say something profoundly rude in sign language. But it's very basic. She comes back from school, but she just, she just reels them off. I said, "Do you know any other ones?" And she knows about 3 or 4. This does this. This does this. And she's at that joyous age where everything goes in and stays in.
Yeah, and they're teaching a "Daddy, you're a dickhead" in sign language, and you're a girl. Okay, we are digressing significantly. Okay, so the other thing that I guess for somebody in your position, 2 years sober, on furlough, I mean, there's one thing trying to fill time in the evenings when you get back from work and just kind of getting stuck into FIFA and all the rest of it, but actually filling 24 hours a day for however long that was, 8 weeks, 12 weeks?
I was off work for 4 months, I think.
Yeah.
March till March, or the end of March, April, May, June. I think I went back to work sometime in July.
Yeah. So being able to, getting on that metaphorical hamster wheel every day and knowing actually if your mental health isn't looked after, you know where the dark place is.
Yes. Yeah. There were a few dark places in that sort of lockdown. Nothing tragic, nothing desperate. Well, probably a few desperate times in my own head, well, despair more than desperation. But yeah, looking back, I wish I'd kept diaries. I can't remember what we did. I probably just sort of got through till tea time, and then sort of just took a big deep breath once our daughter had gone to sleep. But yeah, obviously there was no alcohol. Fortunately, although my wife, I don't want to keep mentioning that she has a glass of wine or two, she would have a glass or two, not every night. Yeah, I don't know how I would have coped had, let's say, I stopped drinking, had sort of lockdown that March come 3 months into my sort of sobriety. I really hate to think how that could have played out.
Yeah, I think there's perhaps a lot of what ifs in that as well, because without having a daughter, that's going to keep you occupied for most of the time.
Yeah.
That could have taken a different direction as well. But you said that while the house renovations were going on, so presumably the house renovations were happening during lockdown, and you were, they were people that were excluded from the lockdown because construction was excluded. But you said that they'd moved out. So did you feel, I'm going to use the word safe, maybe inappropriately, but safe in your own company to kind of not go down kind of routes that you don't want to be in?
Yeah, I mean, I did. I was pretty, I don't remember. There was no, during lockdown, I think I wasn't tempted to drink. And to be honest, when my wife and daughter had moved out, I mean, I moved into my in-laws for about a week and a half, and it just didn't work for me. I moved home, but my brother, my youngest brother Alex, was at home. So obviously, if there was a temptation, I wouldn't have been able to get away with it anyway. Yeah. We sort of, it was quite good actually, because it was sort of some adult company. We fight like brothers do, but nothing bad. We played some golf and took him out. I did a lot of evening jogging then because it was the summer. We kept busy, but again, it would just have to be a what if. Had I had I been here on my own, had Alex not been around, that could have been another thing. But I was pretty confident in, you know, I was sort of 2 years. Would I've been 2 years into sobriety then? Yeah. So, or 2.5 years. I was pretty good then, and I was beginning to develop, you know, this running. What the running has, the commitment to running has then turned into my commitment to writing my blog and recording my podcasts, amongst sort of other things. I did actually do a Coursera online course about mental well-being. So that was something else that, you know, probably put about 15 to 20 hours into that, but might seem insignificant. But for me, that was quite a big sort of thing to start something and actually get it finished, to get a little certificate at the end of it.
Yeah. So is that, as a mental health course, is that just kind of insights into kind of mental health, things that you can maybe recognize in yourself?
Yeah, it was. I can't remember the exact title, but it was all online learning, pre-recorded videos run by a lecturer out of Yale University. And so I can't say I've got a degree from Yale, but I did actually take part in I think it was about 15 hours guided learning and sort of, but yes, studying that. I mean, it wasn't about addiction. It was about sort of mental well-being, but there were so many crossovers to addiction. You know, there were so many behavioral traits and characteristics that I saw in myself when she was sort of discussing the sort of the negative side of mental health, or the, you know, having a bad mental episode. And it was certainly easy for me to recognize some of the points she was making within the sort of lectures that I was listening to.
Okay. So not a degree from Yale, but you've certainly worked under the tutelage of somebody, the renowned Yale professor of mental health, or whatever they're called.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, that's good. That works, Stu. You can put that on your CV.
Yeah, I will.
Okay, good. Also, finding the silver lining within it all, kind of the lockdown experience and that kind of coming so soon into your sobriety and then you getting through it, it feels like almost you were almost put on an accelerated path through sobriety, because I think some people would never actually find themselves in situations where they have to be comfortable in their own skin. They've got to be comfortable alone. They've got to, you know, fill time in excess.
Yes.
Makes sense. So, you know, it's all right being able to get home from work at 4 o'clock and fill time until you go to bed at 9 o'clock. It's very different being able to fill 150 hours a week, if there are that many in a week. But you know what I mean? There are a lot of hours in a week when you've got nothing else to do but drive yourself mad.
Yeah, and be put under, you know, a 3-year-old child is well, it's a lot of responsibility, but they also, when they're yours, well, also when they're other people's, they can push your buttons as well, can't they? We all know young children are designed in a way to aggravate.
Yeah. And they know, and you know, you're supposed to be the adult in the relationship, but they know how to actually bring you down to the child level, for sure.
Yeah, very much so.
Just do a live corrections corner based on the fact that I wasn't confident in my own maths. 168 hours in a week.
I was trying to do it in my head and got lost at 4. I got to 48 times 2 is 96, and then I didn't go past that.
So yeah, let's put that out there before I get any ridicule. Okay, even with the interruption that we had when your wife
yeah, my Wi-Fi went down.
Your Wi-Fi went down.
Not my wife.
We will release the text messages as part of the release for this episode, because the text conversation was as interesting as the episode has been. Yes, no, we've come to the end of our time that we put in. I think actually that's been a really interesting rattle through, kind of tiptoeing the line of kind of addictive behavior and starting to understand actually, and it's a real positive, actually taking the responsibility to snap your CD, your computer game, knowing that it's not doing you any favors. That's kind of a big step in terms of insight and responsibility around that. But then the real challenge of things like lockdown and kind of getting through that, I think it's been really, really positive, really interesting. Yeah. I'm sure there's plenty more that we could have discussed, and I think there's a couple of things that we can take into another episode as well, that we just have run out of time for. What we'll say then is, anything to wrap up on your side before we close down?
No, there was a good point that I sort of wrote down, and I probably should have wrote it down earlier. And it's sort of in these sort of period of finding, in the period of that 2 years initial sobriety before I sort of got into my running and then have made significant positive steps in recent times. Although I didn't relapse and take a drink, I mean, I relapsed on my recovery on numerous occasions because I just took my eye off the ball. And I think, like, I guess we're all guilty of at times, I didn't take enough responsibility for my recovery and was, in a sense, hoping that the golden egg would sort of fall into my lap. I'd find something that sort of made me happy. And I think, if I'm being perfectly honest, I hoped other people would drag me along with them. And it's not till I realised that I needed to really commit to my recovery because it's mine. And it's when that sort of penny finally dropped that if I can commit to running 30 miles a week, which I did and still sort of do, I need to commit more to my family. I need to commit more to my work. Mm-hmm. And in the last sort of 12 to 18 months, I have made huge strides in that. And we're sort of sitting here now doing a podcast. This is episode 13 or 14 of this series, and I've recorded probably 20 other episodes in the last 8 months. It wasn't just a 1 or 2 shot. It's something I've stuck with again. So if you are watching this, there are huge benefits to recovery, but sadly, you have to put a lot of bloody hard work into it. And I'll be the first one to admit that I didn't for 2.5 years. I hoped things would fall into place, and they don't. Let's be honest. You have to be, they don't. You have to put the hours in, and they're hard hours. Yeah, we could call them hard miles. You don't have to run a single mile, but you're going to have to do plenty of miles in your head.
Yeah. No, it's it reminds me of, like, my brother says this often. So he works in the health and fitness industry, and one of his reflections often is around people who come to him, want to kind of lose weight, get fit, and all the rest of it, and they come with the baggage of talking about everything in moderation, which is, the sentiment is okay. When you, in terms of weight loss, it's like, yeah, just a little bit of everything in moderation. That's fine until you flip it on its head and kind of say, but you've lived your life to excess until this point. Yeah. So why do you think moderation is going to work in whatever it is that you're going to do? And I think from going from 100 miles an hour into a dark place to then thinking, and this is part of the learning curve, isn't it? From alcohol, being an active drinker to not, is going at 100 miles an hour into that dark place and then just stopping and thinking, oh, it's plain sailing now, I just don't drink. It's not going to cut it. You have to, there's almost kind of an acceptance that you're going to have to take some things to the excess, but in the other way to find the positives and the moderation later on.
Definitely. Very well.
Okay. No, I think that's a really good point, and helpful to finish on that one. So we are going to make sure that we don't leave it quite so long until we catch up again. But we're looking forward to people contributing to Stay Sober with Stu.
Yes.
We're gonna push that up a little bit, we hope. And there'll be some good raffle prizes and some rubbish ones as well.
Oh, there'll be rubbish ones, yeah.
Anybody's got any questions or anything, obviously hwomthepod@gmail.com is questions, comments. We've got a couple of episodes lined up with guest speakers, like we've said before, so we're running towards those, I think, so we're about planning those sessions. But yeah, no, it's been really good for me to be back in this headspace and talking to you, Stu. It's been a good episode. So yeah, very good to see you.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. Thanks. Brilliant episode.
All right. Cheers, pal. Speak to you soon.
Thanks, mate.
Bye.